My name is Annette, and I am 53 years old. When my adopted daughter was 3, I held her tiny hand and promised to love her forever. For 15 years, I kept that promise through every tear, every laugh, every milestone. Then she found her birth mother, and everything changed. The day she told me I was not invited to her college send-off dinner, my heart shattered into a million pieces. But what happened at that dinner changed everything, and not in the way anyone expected. Before I tell you what my daughter discovered that night, I would love to know where you are joining me from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss how this story unfolds. Trust me, the ending will surprise you. Let me take you back to where this all began, back to a time when my heart ached for something I thought I could never have. I was 35 years old, living in Nashville, Tennessee, working as a hospital administrator. It was a stable job with good benefits and regular hours. My husband Robert was a civil engineer who spent his days designing bridges and highways. We had a nice house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 cars in the driveway, and a backyard big enough for a swing set. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. But inside our home, there was an emptiness that no amount of success could fill. Robert and I had been trying to have children for 8 long years. 8 years of hope followed by crushing disappointment. 8 years of doctor's appointments, fertility treatments, and whispered prayers that went unanswered. We went through 3 rounds of IVF, and each failure felt like a death. I remember sitting in the bathroom after the 3rd negative test, staring at the little white stick, wondering what was wrong with me. Why could other women do this so easily while my body refused to cooperate? The doctors eventually told us that my chances of conceiving naturally were almost non-existent. Something about my hormones, my age, my biology. I stopped listening after a while because the medical terms just made me feel more broken. I fell into a mild depression during that time. I would look at mothers pushing strollers in the park and feel a jealousy so intense it scared me. I avoided baby showers and first birthday parties because I could not bear to celebrate what I could not have. Robert was my rock through all of it. He never blamed me, never made me feel like less of a woman. He would hold me at night when I cried and whisper that we would figure it out together. One evening after another particularly hard day, he sat me down on our living room couch and took my hands in his. "What if we adopt?" he asked. His eyes were so full of love and hope that I could not look away. What if there is a child out there who needs us as much as we need them? At first, I hesitated. I worried that I would not be able to love someone else's child the way I would love my own. I worried about the challenges, the unknowns, the what-ifs. But as the weeks passed and Robert's words echoed in my mind, I started to see things differently. Love was not about biology. Love was about choice, commitment, and showing up every single day. I realized that being a mother was not about giving birth. It was about giving everything you have to another human being. So we contacted an adoption agency and began the long, complicated process of becoming parents. There were mountains of paperwork to fill out, background checks to pass, and home studies to endure. Social workers came to our house and inspected every room, asked us questions about our marriage, our finances, our plans for the future. It felt invasive at times, like we were being judged for wanting to do something good. But we pushed through because the goal was worth every uncomfortable moment. I started preparing a nursery in the spare bedroom. I painted the walls a soft yellow because I did not know if we would get a boy or a girl. Robert built a small wooden dresser with his own hands, sanding each edge smooth so no little fingers would get splinters. We bought stuffed animals and picture books and tiny clothes in every color of the rainbow. The room sat empty for 18 months while we waited, but I would go in there sometimes just to imagine what it would be like when our child finally came home. Then one Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang. I remember exactly where I was standing when I answered. I was in the kitchen making coffee, not expecting anything special. The voice on the other end was calm and professional, but the words she spoke changed my life forever. "We have a 3-year-old girl who needs a home. Would you and your husband be interested in meeting her?" I nearly dropped the phone. My hands were shaking as I said yes. Yes, of course we would meet her. Robert came home from work that day to find me pacing the living room, unable to sit still. "We are going to be parents," I told him. "We might actually be parents." The day we went to meet her at the Child Services Center, I was so nervous I could barely breathe. Robert held my hand as we walked through the sterile hallways past offices and waiting rooms until we reached a playroom filled with toys and tiny furniture. And there she was, Brooke. She was sitting alone in the corner away from the other children. Her hair was brown and curly, a little tangled like no one had brushed it in days. Her eyes were the most striking shade of green I had ever seen, like spring leaves after a rain. She was hugging a worn-out teddy bear to her chest, holding it so tight like it was the only thing in the world she could trust. She did not look up when we walked in. The social worker introduced us, but Brooke just kept staring at the floor, her little shoulders hunched, like she was trying to make herself invisible. My heart broke for her in that moment. This tiny person had already experienced more pain and rejection than any child should ever know. I walked over slowly and sat down on the floor next to her, making sure I was at her eye level. I did not want to tower over her or make her feel small. I kept my voice soft and gentle when I spoke. "Hi, sweetie. I am Annette. What is your teddy bear's name?" She looked up at me, then, and those green eyes searched my face like she was trying to figure out if I was safe. Her voice was barely a whisper when she answered. "He does not have a name. Would you like to give him one?" Something shifted in her expression, the tiniest flicker of interest, of hope. She looked down at the bear, then back at me, and for the first time she smiled. It was small and hesitant, but it was real. And in that moment I knew with absolute certainty that this was my daughter. Not because of blood or biology, but because something deep in my soul recognized her as mine. The adoption process took another few months to finalize, but eventually, Brooke came home with us. Those first 3 months were challenging in ways I had not anticipated. She would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, terrified of monsters that existed only in her memories. I would rush to her room and hold her until the shaking stopped, singing lullabies until she fell back asleep. She was afraid of loud noises, afraid of strangers, afraid of being left alone. The trauma of her early years had left deep scars that would take time to heal, but slowly, day by day, she began to open up. She started laughing at Robert's silly jokes. She let me brush her hair and put it in pigtails. She began exploring the house, touching everything with curious fingers, like she could not believe this was really her home. The first time she called me Mommy, I cried for an hour straight. We were in the kitchen making peanut butter sandwiches, and she tugged on my sleeve and said, "Mommy, can I have more jelly, please?" I had to turn away so she would not see my tears. Robert found me later still emotional, and he just held me and laughed and cried along with me. Robert became daddy shortly after that. He would carry her on his shoulders around the backyard, pretending to be a horse, while she giggled uncontrollably. He taught her how to catch fireflies in mason jars and how to skip rocks across the pond at the park. He was the father she had never had, and she adored him completely. Our little family of 3 was finally complete. The empty spaces in our home and our hearts were filled with laughter and love, and the pitter-patter of small feet running down the hallway. Every night before bed, Brooke would hug me and say, "Love you, Mommy," and I would hold her close and whisper back, "Love you more, sweetheart, always and forever." Those were the golden years, the years when everything felt right, and the future stretched out before us like a promise. I had no idea how fragile that promise would turn out to be. The years that followed were filled with the ordinary magic of raising a child. I adjusted my work schedule to part-time so I could be present for all the moments that mattered. Every morning I would wake Brooke up with a gentle kiss on the forehead and help her get ready for school. Every afternoon I would be waiting at the pickup line watching for her face among the crowd of children streaming out of the building. Her smile when she spotted me never failed to make my day. We developed rituals that became the foundation of our family life. Saturday mornings were for pancakes shaped like animals. Sunday afternoons were for baking cookies together, making a mess of the kitchen with flour and chocolate chips. Rainy days meant building blanket forts in the living room and reading stories until the sun came out again. I treasured every single moment because I knew how close I had come to never having them at all. Robert and I made sure Brooke never felt different because she was adopted. We were honest with her from the beginning, explaining in age-appropriate ways that families are built in many different ways. When she asked about her birth parents, which she did occasionally as she grew older, I always answered truthfully but gently. "Your birth parents could not take care of you," I would tell her. "But they wanted you to have a good life, so they made sure you came to us. They loved you enough to let you go." I never spoke badly about the people who had given her up. I did not know the full details of their situation, but I knew that speaking ill of them would only hurt Brooke. She needed to believe that she was loved even by those who could not keep her. That belief was essential to her sense of self-worth. As Brooke entered her teenage years, things became more complicated. Adolescence is hard for every child, but adopted children often face additional challenges. Brooke started asking more probing questions about her origins. Who were her birth parents? Why did they give her up? Was there something wrong with her that made them not want her? I tried my best to answer these questions, but there were limits to what I knew. The adoption records contained minimal information about her birth family. I knew her mother had been young and struggling, but beyond that the details were vague. Brooke found this lack of information frustrating, and sometimes that frustration turned into anger directed at me. There were arguments during those years, slammed doors and shouted words that we would both regret later. Brooke accused me of keeping secrets from her, of not understanding what it was like to not know where you came from. I tried to be patient to remember that her pain was not really about me, but it hurt nonetheless. It hurt to pour your entire heart into someone and have them push you away. Robert was better at handling the conflicts than I was. He had a calm demeanor that could diffuse almost any situation. When Brooke and I were at odds, he would step in and mediate, helping us find our way back to each other. He reminded me that teenagers are supposed to rebel, that it was a normal part of growing up. "She will come around," he would say. "Just give her time and space to figure things out." And he was right. Despite the occasional storm, Brooke always came back. After a fight, she would appear at my bedroom door looking sheepish and apologetic. She would crawl into bed beside me and whisper, "Sorry, Mom, I did not mean it." And I would hold her like I had when she was 3 years old, stroking her hair and telling her that I loved her no matter what. Even during the hardest times, there were constants that kept us connected. Every night before bed, no matter how the day had gone, Brooke would hug me and say, "Love you, Mom." It was our ritual, our promise, our anchor. As long as we had that, I believed we could weather any storm. Beyond the emotional investment, Robert and I also invested financially in Brooke's future. When she was 6 years old, I opened a college savings account in her name. Every month without fail, I deposited money into that account. Sometimes it was a lot, sometimes it was just a little, depending on how tight things were. But I never missed a single month. That account represented my dreams for her, my hopes that she would have opportunities I never had. Robert worked overtime shifts to contribute to the fund. He gave up hobbies and luxuries so we could save more. We drove older cars instead of buying new ones. We skipped vacations and ate at home instead of going to restaurants. Every sacrifice was made willingly, joyfully, even because we were building towards something important. We were building our daughter's future. As Brooke progressed through high school, her academic potential became increasingly clear. She excelled in English and history, writing essays that her teachers praised as remarkably mature. She joined the debate club and discovered a passion for arguing persuasively. She volunteered at a local food bank on weekends, developing a sense of social responsibility that made me proud. I hired an SAT tutor to help her prepare for college entrance exams. It was expensive, but I viewed it as an investment in her success. I researched universities, obsessively making lists of schools that had strong programs in the humanities. I dragged Robert and Brooke on campus visits during summer breaks, walking through quadrangles and imagining her there. Then came the spring of her senior year. The waiting period after college applications had been submitted was excruciating. Brooke checked the mailbox every day, hoping for good news and dreading bad news in equal measure. I tried to distract her with activities and conversations, but we were all living in a state of suspended anticipation. The acceptance letter from the University of Virginia arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I was at work when Brooke called me, screaming so loudly I could barely understand her words. I got in. She kept saying, "Mom, I got in." I left work early that day, something I never did, and drove home as fast as the speed limit would allow. When I walked through the door, Brooke ran into my arms, and we held each other and cried. Robert joined us moments later, wrapping his big arms around both of us, and we stood there in the hallway as a family overwhelmed with joy and relief and gratitude. All those years of hard work, all those sacrifices had led to this moment. Our daughter was going to college. Our daughter was going to have the future we had dreamed of for her. That evening, I gave Brooke a bank card linked to my personal account. It was meant for emergencies, for unexpected expenses, for anything she might need while she was away at school. I wanted her to know that even when she was hundreds of miles away, I would still be there to support her. "For emergencies and anything you need, sweetheart," I said as I handed her the card. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "Thank you, Mom. I could not have done this without you." Those words meant everything to me. They were validation of all the love I had given, all the sacrifices I had made. My daughter appreciated me. My daughter loved me. We were going to be okay, or so I thought. The summer before Brooke left for college should have been a time of celebration and preparation. Instead, it became the beginning of a slow unraveling that I never saw coming. It started innocently enough. Brooke came to me one evening and asked if she could do one of those DNA ancestry tests. She had seen advertisements online and was curious about her genetic background. Where did her curly brown hair come from? What about those striking green eyes? She wanted to know the story written in her cells. I felt a twinge of apprehension when she asked, a small alarm bell ringing somewhere deep in my subconscious, but I pushed it aside. Brooke had every right to explore her heritage. Denying her that would be controlling and unfair. so I agreed to support her curiosity, even though part of me was afraid of what she might find. "If you want to know where you come from, I will support you," I told her. I meant it even as my stomach churned with unnamed fears. The DNA kit arrived a few days later. Brooke swabbed her cheek with the little cotton stick, sealed the sample in its plastic tube, and mailed it off to the testing company. Then we waited. The results were supposed to take 4 to 6 weeks, and I tried not to think about them during that time. I focused on helping Brooke shop for dorm supplies and choose her classes. I focused on savoring the last few weeks I would have with her at home. When the results finally came, Brooke was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. I was washing dishes, only half paying attention, when I heard her gasp. "Oh my God," she said. "Mom, come look at this." I dried my hands and walked over to see what had surprised her. The screen showed a colorful pie chart breaking down her ethnic heritage. Mostly Irish and Italian, with smaller percentages of other European backgrounds, but that was not what had caught her attention. There was a notification at the top of the page highlighted in bright letters. "DNA match, found close family member." My heart stopped. The testing company had connected Brooke with someone who shared a significant portion of her DNA, someone who was almost certainly a close blood relative. Brooke clicked on the match and a profile appeared. The name listed was Crystal, age 42. The relationship estimate said parent or child. There was a small photograph attached to the profile showing a woman with curly brown hair and green eyes that looked exactly like Brooke's. "That is my birth mother," Brooke whispered. She was trembling. "Oh my God, that is really her." Crystal had already sent a message through the testing company's platform. She wanted to connect, wanted to meet, wanted to explain why she had given Brooke up all those years ago. The message was emotional and apologetic, filled with phrases like, "I never forgot you, and I have thought about you every single day." I read the message over Brooke's shoulder, and each word felt like a small cut. This woman, this stranger, was reaching out to claim a piece of my daughter. After 18 years of absence, she wanted back into Brooke's life. "Do you want to meet her?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain steady. Brooke looked at me, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was excited and nervous and uncertain all at once. "Is that okay with you?" It was not okay with me. Every instinct I had was screaming that this was dangerous, that nothing good could come from this. But I could not say that. I could not let my own fears stand in the way of something Brooke clearly needed. "I will support you no matter what," I said. "If meeting her is important to you, then we will figure it out together." Brooke arranged to meet Crystal at a coffee shop the following weekend. She wanted to go alone to have the space to process whatever happened without me hovering nearby. I understood her reasoning, even though it hurt. This was her journey, her story, and I needed to let her walk it in her own way. The hours she was gone were some of the longest of my life. I paced around the house, unable to focus on anything. Robert tried to distract me with conversation and television, but I could not concentrate. My mind kept imagining what was happening at that coffee shop. What was Crystal saying? What was Brooke feeling? Would she come home changed? When Brooke finally returned, her eyes were red from crying, but her face was glowing with an emotion I had never seen before. She looked younger somehow, like a weight she had been carrying for years had suddenly been lifted. "Mom, she is amazing," Brooke gushed. "She looks just like me." We have the same laugh, the same mannerisms. It is incredible. She told me everything Crystal had shared. Crystal had been 24 when she gave birth to Brooke, struggling with drug addiction and unable to care for a child. The state had taken Brooke away and placed her in foster care. Crystal spent years battling her demons before finally getting clean. She had been sober for 10 years, now had a stable job, had remarried a man named Darren. She even had 2 other children, a boy and a girl, Brooke's half-siblings. "I have a brother and a sister," Brooke said, wonderment in her voice. "I have a real family out there." The word real felt like a slap. What were Robert and I, if not real? What was our home, our love, our 15 years of devotion? I wanted to say something to point out that we were her real family too, but I held my tongue. Brooke was processing something huge, and I needed to give her room to feel whatever she was feeling. Over the following weeks, Brooke spent more and more time with Crystal and her newfound family. There were dinners, shopping trips, afternoons at the park with her half-siblings. Each time she came home, she talked about Crystal with reverence and admiration. Crystal had overcome so much. Crystal was so strong. Crystal understood her in a way no one else could. Meanwhile, Brooke talked to me less and less. When I asked about her day, she gave one-word answers. When I suggested activities we could do together, she always had other plans. She started spending evenings in her room with the door closed, texting people I could only assume were her birth family. The distance between us grew wider with each passing day. I tried not to take it personally. Robert kept reminding me that this was a lot for Brooke to process, that she needed time to integrate this new part of her identity. But it was hard not to feel replaced, not to feel like I was being pushed aside to make room for someone new. One evening, I passed by Brooke's room and overheard her talking on the phone. She did not know I was there, did not know I could hear every word through the thin wall. "I know, right," she was saying. "It is so different with you. With my real mom, I mean. I always felt like something was missing, and now I finally understand what it was. My real mom." The phrase echoed in my mind long after I walked away. I went to my bedroom and closed the door and cried silently into my pillow. I did not want Robert to hear. I did not want anyone to see how much those 3 words had devastated me. The signs continued to multiply. Brooke's Instagram, which I sometimes checked to see what she was up to, became filled with photos of Crystal and her new family. Smiling selfies at restaurants, group shots at someone's birthday party, pictures of Brooke holding her baby half-brother looking happier than I had seen her in months. The caption on one photo made me sick to my stomach. "Finally found where I belong," where she belonged, as if our home had never been her home, as if our love had never been enough. I showed the post to Robert that night, and he was just as hurt as I was, but he handled it differently than I did. While I wanted to confront Brooke to demand an explanation, he counseled patience and restraint. "She is 18, he said. "She is figuring out who she is. It is not a rejection of us. It is just exploration." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the pit in my stomach told me something was very wrong. My daughter was slipping away, and I did not know how to hold on. 1 month before Brooke was scheduled to leave for college, I decided to throw her a send-off dinner. I wanted to celebrate this milestone properly, to gather our family and friends and give her the farewell she deserved. I started planning immediately, putting all my energy into creating the perfect evening. I called the Italian restaurant that had always been Brooke's favorite, the one where we celebrated every birthday and special occasion. I reserved their private dining room and ordered a custom menu featuring all the dishes she loved. I designed beautiful invitations and sent them to relatives, neighbors, and Brooke's closest friends from high school. I ordered a cake from the best bakery in town, decorated with the University of Virginia colors and a fondant replica of the school's logo. Every detail was considered. Every element was chosen with love. I wanted Brooke to feel special, to know that her accomplishment mattered, to understand how proud we were of everything she had achieved. When the invitations were ready and the plans were set, I called Brooke to tell her about the celebration. She picked up after several rings, sounding distracted. "Hey, Mom," she said. "What is up?" "I have a surprise for you," I said, unable to contain my excitement. "I am throwing you a college send-off dinner. The private room at Marcello's, all your favorite foods, everyone who loves you in one place. It is going to be wonderful." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Too long. Mom, we need to talk," Brooke finally said. Her voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by something flat and distant. "What is it, sweetheart? Crystal is throwing me a dinner too. She has been planning it for weeks. And honestly, I want to celebrate with my real family." I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands went cold. I must have misheard her. I must have. "What do you mean, real family?" I asked. "We are your family, Brooke." She sighed like I was being difficult. "You took care of me, and I appreciate that. But Crystal is my blood. She is my mom. She understood me from the moment we met. We have this connection that I have never had with anyone else." Every word was a knife sliding between my ribs. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "I think it is better if you do not come to my send-off dinner," Brooke continued. "I do not want things to be awkward. Crystal's family will be there. Her husband, my siblings, her friends. And I need to focus on my real connections now, the ones that matter. You are uninviting me." I could barely speak. "After everything. After 15 years, I am not uninviting you. I am just saying it would be better if you were not there. It is not personal, Mom. I just need to do this my way." The casualness of her cruelty was almost worse than the words themselves. She spoke as if she were declining a lunch invitation, not ripping apart the foundation of our relationship. "Brooke, I have been your mother for 15 years. I was there for every nightmare, every fever, every heartbreak. I changed your diapers. I taught you to read. I held you when you cried. Does none of that matter to you?" "Of course it matters," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I said thank you. I am grateful, but I need to move on now. I need to build something with my real family. I hope you can understand. I could not understand. I would never understand. And that college fund, I said, my voice hardening. That money your father and I have been saving for 15 years. Who do you think is going to pay for your education? Crystal? Brooke was silent for a moment. Then she said, "That is not fair, Mom. You cannot hold money over my head. I am not holding anything over anyone's head. I am asking you to recognize who has actually been here for you, who has sacrificed for you, who has loved you." "I do recognize it," she said, but her tone was defensive, now irritated. "I already said thank you. What more do you want from me? I want you to treat me like your mother, because that is what I am." The line went quiet. Then I heard the click of her hanging up. She had ended the call without another word, without a goodbye, without an apology. I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to dead air, feeling my heart crumble into dust. When Robert came home that evening, he found me sitting in the dark living room, unable to move. I told him what had happened, watching his face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. "She cannot do this," he said, pacing the floor. "After all we have sacrificed, after everything we have given her." "We cannot force her to love us," I said. My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "We cannot make her want us." Robert sat down beside me and took my hand. "So what do we do?" I did not have an answer. Not then. I just sat there in the darkness, mourning the daughter I was losing, wondering where I had gone wrong. The days that followed were among the worst of my life. I moved through them like a ghost going through the motions of daily existence without really being present. I canceled the dinner reservation. I called the bakery and canceled the cake. I emailed everyone on the guest list and made up some excuse about a scheduling conflict. Each cancellation felt like another small death. Another reminder that my daughter did not want me at her celebration, that she had chosen someone else over me. I tried not to cry in front of Robert, but at night when he was asleep, I would slip out of bed and go to Brooke's room. I would sit on her bed and look at the photographs on her walls, the posters, the awards, all the evidence of the life we had built together. I would pick up the teddy bear she had been holding when we first met, the one she had never gotten rid of, and I would hold it and weep. My friends tried to comfort me, but they did not understand. How could they? Their children were their own flesh and blood. They had never known the unique vulnerability of adoptive parenthood, the constant underlying fear that one day your child might decide you are not enough. After a week of wallowing, something shifted inside me. The sadness did not disappear, but it began to harden into something else. I realized that I could not control what Brooke did or how she felt, but I could control how I responded. I could control what I was willing to accept. I called the bank and asked them to cancel Brooke's supplementary card, the one linked to my account. The representative asked if I was sure, and I said yes. Then I logged into the college savings account and transferred the money to a different account, one that only Robert and I had access to. I did not do these things out of spite or revenge. I did them because I needed to establish boundaries. If Brooke wanted to be part of Crystal's family, then Crystal's family could support her. I would not continue to bankroll someone who treated me like I did not exist. Robert supported my decision completely. She made her choice, he said. Now she lives with it. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was also necessary for my own dignity, for my own sanity, for whatever was left of my broken heart. The night of Brooke's send-off dinner arrived. She was somewhere across town with Crystal and her new family celebrating without me, while I sat alone in my living room watching the clock. Robert had offered to stay home with me, but I told him to go out with his friends. I did not want him to see me like this. I needed to be alone with my grief. I tried to distract myself with television, but nothing held my attention. I tried to read a book, but the words blurred together. Eventually, I just sat there in silence, imagining what was happening at that restaurant. Was Brooke laughing? Was she happy? Did she spare even a single thought for the mother she had left behind? The house felt empty without her, even though she had barely been around for weeks. I walked through the rooms remembering everything we had done together. The kitchen where we baked cookies, the living room where we built blanket forts, her bedroom where I had tucked her in 1,000 times, where she had whispered, "I love you, Mommy," into the darkness. 15 years of memories, 15 years of love, and she had thrown it all away for people she had known less than 3 months. I do not know what time it was when my phone rang, late, probably past 11. I looked at the screen and saw Brooke's name. My first instinct was not to answer. What more could she possibly say to hurt me, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Mom." Her voice sounded different, small, chastened. "Can I come home?" I sat up straighter. "What happened? Can I come home? Please," I wanted to say no. Part of me wanted to make her suffer the way she had made me suffer, but I could not do it. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and a mother's love does not disappear just because it has been wounded. "Yes," I said. "Come home." 20 minutes later, I heard a car pull up outside. I watched through the window as Brooke got out of an Uber, walked slowly up the driveway, and stood at the front door. She did not use her key. She just stood there waiting. I opened the door and found her crying. Her mascara was smeared. Her eyes were red and she looked like a lost child rather than an 18-year-old woman about to start college. We stared at each other for a long moment, and then she collapsed into my arms. "I am sorry," she sobbed. "I am so sorry, Mom." I held her while she cried, rubbing her back the way I had when she was little. Part of me wanted to push her away to demand explanations to make her earn this comfort, but the larger part of me, the mother part, could not do anything except hold her and let her cry. Eventually, we made our way to the living room and sat down on the couch. Brooke's tears had slowed, but her voice still shook as she told me what had happened. "The dinner started out fine," she said. "Crystal picked this fancy restaurant. Everyone was dressed up. Her husband was there, and my half-brother and sister and some of Crystal's friends. It felt like a real celebration, like I was finally part of something." I listened without interrupting, even though every word stung. We ate and laughed and took pictures. Crystal kept telling everyone how proud she was of me, how amazing it was that we had found each other again. For a little while, I actually believed that this was where I was supposed to be. Then what happened? The bill came. Brooke's voice hardened. It was a lot, like $800 or something, and Crystal just sort of looked at it and then looked at her husband. I thought I knew where this was going, but I stayed silent. Darren said something about how he had not expected it to be that much. And then Crystal turned to me and asked if I could chip in. She called it my celebration, so she said it made sense for me to contribute. I felt a cold satisfaction spreading through my chest. "Keep going." I said sure, because what else was I going to say? I took out the card you gave me, the one linked to your account, and I tried to pay. Brooke looked at me, her green eyes swimming with fresh tears. It was declined. I tried it 3 times and it kept saying declined, and then Crystal got this look on her face like she was annoyed with me, like I had let her down. She asked if I had another card, but I did not, so I had to call the bank right there at the table, and they told me the card had been canceled by the primary account holder. I did not look away from her gaze. Yes, I canceled it. Why? Because you told me I was not your real family, because you uninvited me from the most important celebration of your life, because you made it clear that Crystal and her family were more important than me. Brooke flinched like I had hit her. If she is your real mother now, I continued, then she should be the one supporting you, not me, not your father, not the people you threw away. The words were harsh, but they needed to be said. I had held my tongue for too long, had swallowed my pain to make room for hers. It was time for her to understand the consequences of her choices. What happened after that, I asked. Brooke wiped her eyes. Crystal and Darren ended up paying, but they were not happy about it. The whole mood changed. Crystal kept making little comments about how she wished she had known I was not going to help. And when I tried to explain that I thought my card would work, she just said, "Well, I guess your adoptive parents are not as supportive as you thought." I stayed quiet, letting the words sink in. And then later, when we were saying goodbye, I asked Crystal if she could help me with college stuff. You know, like sending care packages or maybe helping with books next semester. And she got this weird look on her face. What did she say? She said things are tight right now. She said maybe next semester. She said she would call me later, but the way she said it, I could tell she did not mean it. Brooke's shoulders slumped. That is when I realized. She was not there for me. Not really. She wanted to feel good about reconnecting with her lost daughter. She wanted to take pictures and post them on social media and tell everyone what a great mother she is now. But when it came to actually being there, to actually supporting me, she disappeared, just like she did 18 years ago. I reached out and took Brooke's hand. I did not say I told you so, even though I was thinking it. That would have been petty and cruel, and despite everything, I was not trying to hurt her. I messed up, Mom. Brooke's voice cracked. I messed up so badly. You were right there loving me, taking care of me, and I pushed you away for someone who does not even really want me. She looked up at me with those green eyes, the same eyes that had captured my heart 15 years ago in that foster care playroom. Can you ever forgive me? It was the question I had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. I took a deep breath and chose my words carefully. I forgive you, Brooke. I do. But forgiveness does not mean everything goes back to the way it was. Trust takes time to rebuild. You hurt me deeply. You hurt your father. You made us feel like 15 years of love meant nothing. Brooke nodded, tears streaming down her face. I need to see your actions, not just your words. I need to know that you understand what you did wrong, that you genuinely value what we have. Can you do that? Yes, she whispered. I will do whatever it takes. I pulled her into a hug and we sat there for a long time holding each other in the quiet living room. It was not a complete reconciliation. Too much had happened for that. But it was a beginning, a small step toward healing. When Robert came home later that night, he found us asleep on the couch together, just like we used to be when Brooke was a little girl. He draped a blanket over us and kissed both our foreheads, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe things would be okay. The 2 weeks before Brooke left for college were different from anything I had expected. There were no more arguments, no more cold silences, no more feeling like a stranger in my own home. Instead, there was a quiet effort at repair, a tentative rebuilding of what had been broken. Brooke started doing things around the house without being asked. She washed dishes, did laundry, cooked dinner a few times. Small gestures that might seem insignificant to an outsider, but that meant the world to me. She was trying to show me that she understood that she valued our home and our family. Actions, not just words. She also wrote me a letter. Not a text message, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter on paper. She left it on my pillow one morning, and I found it when I went to make the bed. Dear Mom, it began. I do not know how to express how sorry I am for everything I put you through. Words feel inadequate, but I need to try. When I found Crystal, I was so desperate to understand where I came from that I forgot to appreciate where I belonged. I built her up in my mind as this perfect person who would finally make me feel whole. I convinced myself that blood was the only thing that mattered, that our family was somehow less real because we did not share DNA. I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. You are my real mom. You have always been. You were there for every scraped knee, every broken heart, every moment of doubt and fear. You loved me when I was unlovable. You stayed when anyone else would have left. I threw all of that away for someone who abandoned me once already. And when I finally saw her clearly, when I saw that she was not interested in being a real mother, just in playing one for show, I realized what I had lost. I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I am asking for it anyway. Not because I have earned it, but because I do not know how to move forward without you. You are my mother. You will always be my mother. And I am so sorry for ever making you doubt that. Love always, your daughter, Brooke. I cried when I read it. I read it 3 more times, crying each time. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my jewelry box with my most precious possessions. That evening I went to Brooke's room. She was packing for college, folding clothes into suitcases, looking nervous and hopeful. I sat down on her bed and looked at her. I read your letter, I said. She stopped packing, her whole body tense. And I forgive you, sweetheart. Really forgive you. Not because you earned it, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was punishing you. Brooke burst into tears and threw herself into my arms. I held her tight, feeling the last remaining wall between us finally crumble. But there are things we need to talk about, I continued when she had calmed down. Boundaries, expectations, how things are going to work going forward. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay. The college fund is still there. Your father and I saved that money for you, and it will still go toward your education. But it is not automatic anymore. It is not something you are entitled to just because you exist. I understand, she said. We are going to take this one semester at a time. As long as you stay connected with us, as long as you show us that you value this family, we will continue to support you. But if you push us away again, if you treat us like we do not matter, that support will stop. It was a hard conversation to have, but a necessary one. I needed Brooke to understand that love did not mean unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable. Brooke agreed to everything. She promised to call home at least once a week. She promised to come back for holidays and breaks. She promised to be honest with us about what was happening in her life. Small promises maybe, but they were the foundation on which we would rebuild our trust. As for Crystal, Brooke told me she had tried reaching out several times after the disastrous dinner. But Crystal's responses became increasingly sparse. The woman who had been so eager to reconnect suddenly had no time for phone calls or visits. The text messages that used to come multiple times a day dwindled to occasional one-word replies. The last message Brooke received from Crystal said simply, "Busy this week. We'll call later." That later never came. Weeks passed, then months, and Crystal faded from Brooke's life as quickly as she had appeared. It was painful for Brooke to accept, but also clarifying. Crystal had wanted a feel-good reunion, a story to tell her friends, a way to assuage her own guilt about the past. What she had not wanted was the actual work of being a mother. When that work became apparent, when it required sacrifice and commitment, she disappeared. I did not gloat about being right. I did not say I told you so. I just held Brooke when she cried about it and reminded her that some people are not capable of the love we need from them. It is not our fault when that happens. We just have to accept reality and move forward. The morning of Brooke's departure for college arrived bright and clear. Robert loaded her suitcases into the car while I made one last breakfast in our kitchen. Pancakes shaped like the University of Virginia logo, a throwback to our Saturday morning tradition. Brooke laughed when she saw them, and for a moment everything felt normal again. The 5-hour drive to Virginia was filled with conversation. We talked about her classes, her roommate, her hopes and fears about starting this new chapter. We talked about memories from her childhood, funny stories she had forgotten, embarrassing moments that made her groan and laugh simultaneously. We talked like we used to before Crystal, before everything fell apart. When we arrived at the dormitory, the three of us worked together to carry her belongings up to her room. We assembled her bed, arranged her desk, hung pictures on the walls. I made sure to include a framed photograph of our family, the three of us smiling at her high school graduation. "So you remember where home is?" I said when I hung it. Brooke hugged me. "I will never forget again, Mom. The goodbye was hard. I cried more than I wanted to, and so did Brooke. Robert tried to be stoic, but his eyes were red when we finally pulled away from the curb. I watched through the rearview mirror as Brooke waved from the sidewalk, getting smaller and smaller until she disappeared from view. "She will be okay," Robert said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "I know," I replied. "We will all be okay." That was several years ago now. Brooke graduated from college with honors, earning a degree in education. She teaches 4th grade at an elementary school not far from where we live, close enough that she comes for dinner every Sunday. Every single Sunday without fail, she sits at our table and tells us about her week, her students, her life. She calls me at least twice a week, sometimes more. Quick calls just to check in, to share something funny that happened, to ask for advice. The kind of calls that daughters make to mothers they love and trust. Robert and I attended her graduation ceremony, sitting in the front row with tears streaming down our faces. When Brooke walked across that stage to receive her diploma, she looked directly at us and mouthed the words, "Thank you." Later in her speech as one of the distinguished graduates, she thanked her parents, the ones who had chosen her and loved her and never given up on her. She called us her parents, not her adoptive parents, just her parents. Crystal never resurfaced. Brooke told me once that she had made peace with it, that she no longer wondered what might have been. Some people are only meant to be in our lives for a season, she said. Crystal was a lesson I had to learn. A hard one, but necessary. I have made peace with it too. For a long time, I carried anger toward Crystal, resentment toward the woman who had disrupted our family and nearly stolen my daughter, but I eventually realized that holding on to that anger was only hurting me. Crystal did not care about my feelings. She had moved on with her life. The only person suffering from my bitterness was me. So I let it go. Not for Crystal's sake, but for my own. I chose peace over resentment, freedom over bondage, and my life became lighter because of it. Looking back on everything that happened, I see now that it was a gift in disguise. A painful gift wrapped in heartbreak and betrayal, but a gift nonetheless. The crisis forced Brooke and me to confront issues we had been avoiding for years. It made us communicate more honestly, set healthier boundaries, appreciate each other more deeply. Our relationship now is stronger than it ever was before. And the experience taught me something important about love. Real love is not passive. It is not simply giving people whatever they want because it is easier than conflict. Real love sometimes means saying no. Sometimes it means letting people face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes it means stepping back so they can learn to step forward on their own. I could have kept paying for everything, kept accepting Brooke's rejection, kept pretending that her words did not hurt. But that would not have been love. That would have been enabling. That would have taught her that she could treat people badly without any repercussions. By setting boundaries, by showing her that my love had limits, even if my forgiveness did not. I gave her a more valuable lesson than any amount of money could buy. I taught her that relationships require respect, that people who love you deserve to be treated with kindness, that blood is not the only thing that makes a family. Those are lessons she carries with her now into her own relationships and her own future. Lessons she will pass on to her own children someday, and that more than anything is my legacy as her mother. To all the mothers out there who have been pushed aside, who have felt unseen and unappreciated, I want you to know this: your love matters. Your sacrifices matter. And sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is step back and let them learn. They will make mistakes. They will hurt you. But if the foundation you built was strong, they will find their way back. They always do. Family is not about blood. It is not about DNA or genetics or biological connection. Family is about showing up. It is about staying. It is about choosing each other over and over again, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Brooke chose me, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And that choice, made freely by an adult who understood its weight, means more to me than any biological bond ever could. I am her mother. She is my daughter. And nothing, not time or distance or anyone else's claim, will ever change that. So now I want to ask you a question. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with someone you love? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please hit that like button if this story touched your heart, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. Share this video with someone who might need to hear these words today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this community. May your families be filled with love, understanding, and the courage to work through whatever challenges come your way. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.